Alright, let's be honest, there's two main reasons why people come to Amsterdam. Smoking the funny stuff and... what's the other one again?
Screwing prostitutes!
That's the fella. Well, thanks to Sega and the sequel to Condemned, we've now found a third. So join us, won't you, in the dungeon.
Condemned Criminal Origins scared us witless and shitless when it raced out from the shadows just in time for the launch of 360. You know a game's doing something right when it makes you scared of your own footsteps, the Eurogamer review observed, scoring it a bowel-loosening 7 out of 10. Not bad for just 15 months' work. With new instalments of veteran shockers Resident Evil and Silent Hill still in hiding, Monolith's Flesh Creeper is getting a second crack at becoming the definitive high-def horror experience. Condemned 2 Bloodshot will be spraying gore all over us from its gaping wounds early next month. And yes, sorry Mr. Big Issue Seller, that means more of your lot getting a damn good clobbering. Now, to get us into the mood, Sega recently dragged us to vice capital of Europe, Amsterdam, and plunged us into the dungeons for Fright Night. In the game, protagonist Ethan Thomas is pretty tasty with his bare fists. But there's more fun to be had by grabbing whatever's lying around. Variations on the theme of pain are also something our dungeon dwellers know a thing or two about. There's the tongue twister, something that rips your balls off, and a big rusty hook up the arse. That said, this is Amsterdam, so the hook is the least of our worries. As well as using whatever implement of iniquity Ethan finds lying around, the environment can also be used in the most buttock-clenchingly satisfying ways. But it's not all horrific violence and nerve-shredding fear. A key part of the original Condemned were the CSI-style forensics sections, where you had to analyse clues at the crime scene. Nice idea, but undercooked in Criminal Origins. So, for Condemned 2, they've gone back to the operating table.
So we stitch him up and the last stitch goes right through the nose. I didn't know it either. I think it's rather disgusting.
Of course, the game itself is infinitely more alarming than wandering around a tourist attraction with a bunch of weirdos in fancy dress.
Oh! sorry, my mistake. You're something that sent me the creeps, right?
But Sega was determined to make us feel the fear. Whatever. There's nothing in here that would scare anybody over the age of 8. Nothing at all.
I'm not paid enough for this, I'm really not. Oh, Jesus!
Right, that's quite enough of that. Having exposed myself as a pathetic coward, it was time to reassert my manliness. As George Bush would probably say, thank God for torture.
Right, Ben Payne of Sega, I want answers!
It's key to point out first is that you don't need to have played the first game to play this one. You know, there's not like you need to read the first book really sort of mentality. You can come in and instantly figure out how this game works. Basically, there was a serial killer who was causing havoc in the city and bringing a great evil upon the city as a whole. And in the first game, Agent Thomas, who was the best of the best, you know, the sort of Patrick Bateman character, sort of plummeted whilst trying to solve this crime, and he did it, but this guy is back and now you have to start again, but you start from the you don't start at the top this time, you start at the bottom.
Now, for the no-shit Sherlocks amongst you, as we've said, Monolith is promising much more chin-stroking for the detective side of the sequel.
You know, we don't want to be pigeonholed as just being this sort of bloody, you know, raging the streets violent title. So, you know, the CSI is there to explain the storyline of the game, and so, you know, through the Rosa, who is a character from the first game, comes back as the voice in your ear through this forensic exploration of crime scenes and environments that you're in. And you know, if you can crack the code and figure out the evidence on certain crime scenes correctly, you'll free up areas of the game quicker than you would if you got it wrong.
And if you're the sort of person who leaps out of his skin at the slightest provocation, be afraid.
It's horrifically scary. You know, it is violent and it looks gory, but it's just the implication of what's going to happen more than anything else that keeps you on the edge of your seat and gives you the jumps. You know, the sort of jumps you get from watching Saw, and there's that sort of sensation of what's going to come.
Now, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Condemned 2 is an incredibly violent game. Indeed, Kristen went so far as to describe it the most realistic video game violence we've seen. For the discerning fan of stomach-churning horror, this is great news. Unsurprisingly, the BBFC has slapped it with an 18 certificate. So far, so uncontroversial. Or at least it would be had the classification board not spent the last 9 months locked in a very public battle over Manhunt 2. Refused point blank at first, then toned down and resubmitted, Rockstar's game was refused a second time, with the publisher eventually demanding its day in court. Yet despite winning its appeal, the game was stalled again by the BBFC and only finally given an 18 certificate late last week, and only after the embattled regulator admitted it couldn't do a thing to stop it. In contrast, Condemned 2 was passed first time with no cuts made, despite the BBFC noting its realistic bloody injury and strong emphasis on gore. Why no issues for Sega? Fantastical elements in the game's narrative, according to the BBFC. Well, judge for yourselves. A victory at last for common sense. But none of this is Sega's problem, of course, and quite sensibly, they've been open about the game's nature from the start.
We've worked with the BBFC from pre-alpha on this game, and you know, they've been involved, been very open with us with whether they have concerns, if they have any concerns. The game is 18 plus BBFC. We're communicating that as early as possible. But Sega as a whole just makes games in all different types of genres, from Football Manager that's 3 plus PEGI through to 18 plus games like Condemned 2 and say Viking, Battle for Asgard. And we speak responsibly to the relative target markets for each game.
Very responsible. So, what is his favourite way of killing a homeless person?
It's got to be the toilet bowl. As the environment is, you know, you can put them anywhere, so to speak. And, you know, walls, a lot of people like the washing machines and TV options. I find them a bit staid myself, and I think that there's nothing like breaking a tramp's neck. Or not a tramp as such, but maybe a drug addict in his pants on a toilet bowl.
It's an exciting prospect for horror fans, with Condemned 2 due on 360 and PS3 on April the 4th. Expect a full Eurogamer review soon, if anyone can muster the courage to play it. Won't be me then.
Oh, Jesus!
Although it's probably also worth keeping an eye out for the big issue verdict.
See, the more I play this game, the more I feel uncontrollable urge to just get out on the street and find a real tramp and just punch the face in. Ladies and gentlemen, James the cameraman.